Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the End Time Tribune. It is good for us to get back together with you. We are your host, Brian Ingram and Matthew Miller. Today, we're having on a very special guest today, Tammy. She is from our Ecclesia group. She's from our fellowship that we have been doing. Tammy has been a part of our group for, I think, in the neighborhood of at least 11 years along those lines. So, Brian, I have been talking about strange things going on. And we got to talking on one of our programs specifically about the Four Corners region. And since how Tammy is from there, she immediately responded and said she would like to do a special session with us concerning this. So, Bri, why don't you come on and discuss a little bit about the area she's going to talk about, and what's your thoughts about the area around the Four Corners again?
Well, there's a lot going on in this specific area, especially historically. It was one of the major trade centers between North America and South America when the Native Americans were living here by themselves. Um, what else? There's been a huge amount of paranormal activity out there, obviously. You've got a lot of archaeoastronomy going on as far as how certain buildings are built in that region. A lot of deep Native American lore that goes into it. I don't like to say mythology because within that lore there's a lot of truth, and we've come to find that out more and more as the years have gone on. So, we've been talking about some varied topics here, and this Four Corners region is definitely, the crux of a lot of what we're witnessing right now as we speak, especially concerning disclosure. So,
Okay, well, with that being said, we're just going to give the floor to Tammy. Tammy, I would ask you to give a short introduction to yourself and how long you've been with the Brian I, because boy, it's been a long time. So jump right on in here, Tammy.
Well, you pretty much nailed it about all as long as we've been doing these things together, studies and listening to the show. And um I used to live in Minnesota and moved here to Arizona about 6 years ago. And when you did the show on the Four Corners, it just clicked with me why there's so much crazy stuff happening here. Um I was listening to these um paranormal rangers. They're Navajo law enforcement, retired law officers that did investigate a lot of these activities here. Um Back during the pandemic when things were shut down, and I just found them on YouTube. So I found that interesting when you started talking about the Four Corners with all these things that happened on the reservation. So there's that. And then I like the history things of the area because I've been to some of these locations like Mesa Verde and Bandelier and, the Grand Canyon. Obviously, I've been there, driven through these areas. So it's always fascinated me. And I learned about the Hopi. I heard about the Hopi before with their mesas, your first, second, and third mesa, how it lines up with the Orion's belt. And Jenny sent me these star maps that confirm these locations are actually, lining up with the constellations. So it makes sense, everything you said.
Well, just let me know which star map you want me to share, because right now I'm sharing my screen. So I've got figure 1, 3, 10, and 16. So
Okay. Yeah. So you can see from that constellation Orion there how it perfectly lines up with Orion. And then those like Beetlejuice is on one of the ruins, and Walnut Canyon there is another ruin. So they built their cities on purpose to line up with the constellation Orion. And then it extends into the Grand Canyon, and that a butte where it's named Osiris Temple, and it corresponds to the PI3 Orionis. And the Hopi, the place of emergence. So that's on the Colorado River, and that corresponds to one of the stars too. So it's the Hopi cosmology and the Grand Canyon and all these ruins all line up. And I
That
know you've talked about Orion before, so
yes, that was early on in the ministry. I wanted to start edifying everybody with celestial symbology. So yes, Orion is the sign of the strike in the heavens from the Bible. That is what it is. But looking at these figures, it is crazy that obviously, even from how Orion lines up with the winter solstice sunrise, um, and just all of marking off the cardinal points, is just amazing how it goes right through there. And they literally set this up off because the winter solstice sunrise goes right through Orion's belt. So they were literally setting all of this up intentionally. And what really blows me away is this figure that you've got. It's figure 16 on how the flower of life lines up all across this region. That's enough to blow you away. I just had no idea all the implications of this. So, Brian, what's your thoughts? Did you know of all these correlations?
To be honest, no, I did not, but I'm not surprised by it. Like I've said before, there's the amount of archaeoastronomy that's going on in the Americas is literally mind blowing. I mean, just take South America, for instance, but we even know that we've got massive correlations like the Serpent Mound, for instance. I think that's in Ohio off the top of my head. I don't remember exactly where that's at, but that's so loaded with archaeoastronomy correlations with the alignments out there, specific spots hitting with the solstices and the equinoxes, just on one solitary mound with that serpent mound. You've got a lot of other places doing that same thing, and so I'm not surprised at all. I mean, they held, the as above, so below in high regard within these native tribes. So
Well, I've got a lot I want to share here now because take note, ladies and gentlemen. Let me switch over to figure 3. You're going to have to look at it upside down because for some reason, the constellation Orion to our north and south is perfectly upside down. And this is literally beyond contestation. So literally what they were saying in doing it this way, they realized there were 2 dimensions. They realized there was a spiritual dimension, that's called heaven, and a material dimension, that's called earth. And this isn't just a little bit. Look at this map, ladies and gentlemen. This map, overlaid here north to south with the Four Corners area, is painfully exactly the sign of the strike inverted on the ground. What's your thoughts on that, Brian? Look at it. It's enough to blow you away. It is perfectly lined up.
I don't know what to think, I guess. And it just, you know, when we think along the lines of how things are isochronal, and we know for beyond any shadow of a doubt that when you look at the Younger Dryas event, which is the comet strikes and comet or meteorite strikes, that's all up for debate as to what it was exactly. But nonetheless, that's a lot of people have correlated that with the flood, myself included. And it just makes you wonder, with all of the meteorite events that we know happened in this region, if we had the same thing happen there.
Right. You know, it's enough to blow you away. Just take another look at this image, ladies and gentlemen. No one understand. The sign of the strike comes from Micah chapter 5, verse 1. Now gather yourself in troops, O daughter of troops. He has laid siege against us. They will strike the judge of Israel with a rod on the cheek. We know beyond any contestation that the judge of Israel, of course, is the Lord Jesus Christ, and he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Look up the iconography for the constellation Orion. You will take note that in one hand is a club, and in the other hand, what you see is that small arch there. That is depicted in all astronomy almanacs as a lion's cub. That's always what it's been. That's what the mythology states. So it's incredible when you realize that. So Brian and I have rambled on quite some time. Tammy, back to you.
So I did some research listening to these rangers that go around and do their talks, and their names are John Dover and Stan Milford, and they were Navajo enforcement for many years and both retired from the Rangers. And it's the Rangers that would go out and investigate this activity, not the police. But they told these stories of things that happened in this area, like the night before the Phoenix Lights. Everybody knows the Phoenix Lights, that the big UFO that flew over Phoenix. The very day before, the lights showed up in Loop, Arizona, where one of them lives, and followed each other around town and changed color for like 30 to 40 minutes. Well, the people sat outside in their lawn chairs and watched these lights. And the ranger reported it to the Coconino County Sheriff and thought they'd have all these investigators come out and investigate it. But because it happened the day before the Phoenix Lights, everybody was investigating that instead. And there's other things, like they have Bigfoot. And Bigfoot, particularly like on the San Juan River, where they have documentation of all this evidence that they collected, like 21-inch footprints, hair tracks, audio recordings, like a 5-foot stride, and they track it for miles, and then the tracks would disappear in trackable land and then reappear in trackable land with a distance between them, like they just vanish and come back. And they realized that there was a correlation between the Bigfoot and the UFOs. And they believe that the Bigfoot is not a terrestrial creature. But they have said that this thing is like 8 to 10 feet tall, covered in hair, with a robust build and shoulders like are 3.5 feet wide. And I thought that was, really interesting. And the ranger also talked about missing time. Like he would travel from Loop to Tuba City, and he'd go like 15 to 16 miles in a blink, and would arrive like 45 minutes early from what his normal travel time. And that happened through the Hopi Reservation, when he was traveling through the Hopi Reservation itself, because that's like in the middle of the Navajo Reservation. And he would see all kinds of UFOs until he installed a dash cam in the vehicle, and then all of a sudden there were no UFOs to film. So that's crazy too. And the other things that would happen, like the story of the old man, where these lights approached the house through what was a previous forest fire, so it was kind of an eerie looking scene. Anyway, the object was about 25 feet in diameter, and it shot beams of light around the ground, and the lights would appear on the ground after it shot at the ground, and then the lights approached the house. And he had this little dog that ran toward the lights, and it disappeared, and then it yelped. He heard the dog yelp, and the man ran inside the house after he heard the dog yelp, and he saw these creatures, these grays that were like 3.5 to 4 feet tall. And that was investigated by Bigelow Airspace research investigators, and they're comprised of like special forces people. And they also work cases with the Rangers. And the EPA did a radiation detection of the area. And Bigelow has a contract with ATIP program, which is the Aerial Threat Identification. They had like a grant for $22 to $24 million received for investigating this from Congress. So they came out and did this investigation with them.
And that right there, that's the root of modern disclosure. Everything you just brought up with Robert Bigelow. NIDS is his one program, and then that turned into, just like you said, with ATIP, and then $22 million that was funneled to them with Harry Reid at the forefront, assisting with that. And Harry Reid blew the alarm. Basically, he came out and started talking about everything that was going on, and that was the first major newspaper article that actually started to set everything in motion, getting to where we're at now, and it's all tied into Bigelow.
That's disturbing that we have this tie with this gentleman. So let me get some clarification. So you're saying that the Hopi reservation is in the middle of another reservation? Is that what you meant?
Yes, it is. If you look at a map of the Navajo reservation, in the middle of it is the Hopi reservation. So the Hopi have a reservation inside of a reservation.
So you were saying that he was having missing time. That is to say, he was discovering these shortcuts. I mean, that's really what my personal experience it is, and I have eyewitnesses to this simple fact that. And let me explain. I've talked about this very rarely. There was a time when my good friend was going to travel to go cut wood. He was going to cut down some trees from a place that he and I had been before. It was approximately 45 minutes away. He calls me on his cell phone as he's leaving. Okay, I'll call you when I get there. 4 minutes later, he calls me back. He said, I'm there. I'm already at Mike's house. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, Brad? You can't be. He said, I'm in front of Mike's house and I've stopped and I'm in a state of shock. I'm looking around. I'm already there. So I've got experience with this before. And as crazy as that sounds, it is true. So literally there's these shortcuts. And for some reason, it sounds like that this gentleman he would enter the Hopi reservation and then he would experience missing time. And all of a sudden he's way far away on the other side. It's like he never got to sightsee on the Hopi reservation. He was transported through it for some reason. So that really is crazy. That stuff happening, that very few people tie this together, that they want to say that, hey, I've got missing time. But there's also instances where, no, time is missing, wherein, hey, I just crossed 45 miles in 3 minutes. So what's your thoughts about that, Tammy? Is it, and I don't know, maybe I should get Brian's take on it first. Brian, what's your take? Because we do have instances of this missing time where people don't know where the time went. And then we have other instances where, hey, bam, all of a sudden I'm 45 miles away and I don't know how I got there. So I believe it's both. What's your thoughts, Bri?
I've experienced the latter of what you explained, where suddenly you go from one spot and it should have taken you a certain set amount of time to go from that place to another, but you get there in like 3 minutes. There's a spot in Madison where this happens, actually, in Madison, Wisconsin, And a guy I used to know way back, he was the one that alerted me to it and said, "Watch this." And he pointed it out, showed the time. Sure enough, boom, next thing we know, we're sitting in a spot that should have taken us at least 25, 35, 45, depending on traffic. You're in rush hour traffic at that point. So we shouldn't have been able to go from that spot to that spot that fast, but we did. So I've experienced that. As far as missing time, I don't know that I've ever experienced that, which is kind of crazy with all the paranormal encounters I've had in my life, but I don't think I've ever had missing time. I've had time go backwards. Let's talk about that for a moment. No, let's not, because I can't explain that one. I kept
Right.
getting woke up one night over and over and over again, um, with an event where every single time I'd wake up, the clock was going backwards. And I, to this day, have no explanation for what in the world could have been causing that.
Yeah, there's no explanation for that. And believe me when I say that this friend of mine, this had been planned. Um, the problem was is that that morning, at the time I had 6 children. I had young children at the time, and I was supposed to go with him to help him cut down these trees. And inadvertently, of course, something come up with the children, and I couldn't do that. So he called me first. No, I can't make it. So I was pretty alarmed when 3, 4 minutes later he calls me back. Like, yeah, what's up? He's like, I'm there. I'm at Mike's house. You can't be at Mike's house. You have to get on the interstate. You have to drive for 40 minutes. You can't be at Mike's house. He said, I'm there. He said, I've done pulled over. He turned the truck off. He was that scared. He turned the truck off and he said, I've pulled off the side of the road. I'm at Mike's house. And I'm like, Brad, you can't be. And believe me, this was not at night. This is early morning. And he said he never noticed it. You see, the road out front of Mike's house basically looks like any one lane, road. And a country road, because outside of his subdivision, it was out in the boondocks and it was just a normal, cornfields on both sides, a normal Indiana road. Well, it's the same road that Mike lives on, just 45 miles away. And he said, I didn't notice it switch, but I'm driving down the road, look over. He said he looked over and he's driving by Mike's house. Like, I can't be here. He just left his house. So it sounds like that on multiple occasions, that's what was happened to these researchers. So, Tammy, can you clarify what was this YouTube channel that you found? What is it called?
Well, they call themselves the Paranormal Rangers, and this was just a talk that they did. They have a whole lot of videos out there on these two because they go around and they give presentations about these experiences that they had. And they're both retired now from law enforcement, so they got a lot of time, and they just go around and they do these talks, and they've appeared on other television shows too. And one of the shows that this one ranger was on was that Skinwalker Ranch that you researched, Brian. And so he was talking about the Skinwalkers in his presentation. That's another thing, a whole other thing to talk about too. There's some amazing stuff that happens with these skinwalkers, and they do not like to talk about skinwalkers because they said when you talk about them that they get attacked psychically, that the Navajos just don't ask them about the skinwalkers because they're afraid of them. So they go through a lot of prayers, the smudging, etc., when they prepare to talk about these things. And they said these attacks that they have, it feels like a knife that's twisting in the back of their head or in their back. Like someone takes a knife and just stabs it into them. So yeah. And they said things like the picture that of supposed skinwalker that's on that show, Skinwalker Ranch, wasn't really a skinwalker, but was of a Yabache dancer. and the Yabache, they called them holy people that came to the Navajo to impart knowledge, like don't kill, don't steal, etc. So that kind of reminded me of like the Ten Commandments being taught to them. Like maybe angels came and taught them the Ten Commandments. I don't know, but that's my first thought when he described these people. And he
So what?
said that, hmm?
So I just found it. I'm sharing the screen now. So I take it it was either Stanley Milford Jr. or Jonathan Redbird Dover that you were listening
Yes,
to.
yes, yes. And they go as two witnesses. Yes, that's another interesting thing. They are two witnesses when they go out and give these talks together. And they did come across all these cases throughout their years of law enforcement. And whenever they give these talks, they talk about their law enforcement career first. All the training that they've had, the technical training and everything that they had done, they're actually, like taught to do firefighting and all these things that they had to do. It wasn't just that they were out there investigating the paranormal. It wasn't like the X-Files. It was just their normal everyday activity that these things would happen all the time consistently. So it's pretty crazy all of this stuff that would happen all the time.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. So now I'm looking at it here. Paranormal Rangers, I guess, was on Netflix. Um, so this is pretty incredible. I would do want to talk about this some more. Um, it very uncomfortable topic here, of course. Uh, but you said that they would make sure not to mention audibly the skinwalkers. They could hear them. Um,
Yep, yep. The Navajo belief. The Rangers will talk about it as part of their talks, but they prepare for it spiritually. Prepare for it.
so this lends credence that um, well, it lends credence that we're dealing with celestial entities. These are not terrestrial entities. They're not a part of the material creation. These things are part of the celestial creation, and they can clothe themselves. Um, you know,
That's exactly what they said in their investigations. They said
really.
that they believe that they even teach their children this, the Navajo do, that they are using DNA to make the change to these creatures. They can change into anything, take any form, like the hide of the animal, the bones, even fingernail clippings. The children are taught not to leave fingernail clippings laying around because they think these creatures will take the fingernail clippings and change into the appearance of that child.
Yeah, it's a
Brian,
major teaching early on. Do not leave hair or fingernails around when you get involved in witchcraft. So it doesn't sound to me to be too out of the ordinary, unfortunately.
right, because once again, you're not talking about terrestrial entities. Celestial entities, um, well, they have the capacity to know where this hair came from. Um, so that really takes this to a different level. And like she said, they would see these entities. They would see plasmoids. Let's just come right out and say it, Brian. They saw these plasmoids, and then all of a sudden, these plasmoids could produce grays. And I've been saying that. That is exactly what is described in Jude, right there, 6 and 7. Literally comes right out and says that they clothe themselves with strange flesh when they abandon their proper abode. So I've always called this forming. They are taking from the material creation, much like God took from the dirt and fashioned man. They're able to collect a matter and rearrange that matter into any form that they want to, and that's exactly what it sounds like these paranormal rangers are describing. which is very disturbing because that brings on a whole different aspect with this. It's called many names, but of course, one of the most popular names is doppelganger. And yes, if a celestial entity got a hold of your hair, any of your DNA sample, your hair, your fingernail clippings, yes, they know how to take dirt, they know how to take drywall, they know how to take physical matter and reconstruct it off of that design because your entire blueprint is in your DNA. And they could literally create a doppelganger of you, and you think that this is a terrestrial entity. It is not. It is a celestial entity that has cloven themselves in strange flesh. So that's enough to leave you, dazed and confused, right? That's enough to leave you, bewildered by shock and awe when somebody from the religious community says that. But when you just look at the facts, that this is what you're having to deal with, and this is coming down the barrel. And this episode that Brian and I are going to do pertains right into that. We've been having some massive difficulties trying to get that special edition out to you, but this ties right into this. It's part of that same narrative, and I'm going to hold my tongue about that, but let's get back to this place. So we need to explore this. Obviously, the Native Americans set up all these places off of Orion's belt. So, Tammy, in your investigations, why did the Navajo do this? So they thought that if they created Orion's belt on the ground, it would protect them from these skinwalkers?
Well, it wasn't the Navajo that created these places. The Navajo came in later. It was the ancestors of the Hopi, the Anasazi, that created these places. We're talking about the ruins that are at these sites. So they built their ruins like Canyon de Chalet, Mesa Verde, Bandelier, all these ruins. Walnut Canyon is another ruin. They're all over this area. You can find from the Anasazi people that they're like abandoned areas, but they're there. And the Hopi and the Pueblo live in these places. They lived in them and continue. They believe they're descendants from the Anasazi. So it wasn't the Navajo came in later. Actually, they think the Navajo were from the northeast USA, but I because of their language that they speak, but they lived in this area before obviously Westerners came. So when the Spanish came, they were here already.
So,
But there's evidence that they were migrated here from somewhere else.
okay, so that kind of didn't answer my question. Clarify. In your research, did you find out if they made these places for protection against the skinwalkers? Yes or no?
No, there's no evidence of that I've come across.
Okay.
But what I have come across was their if you look into their ancestry, there's places in this area that they know, like, they emerged from the earth. They believe in, like, this is the fourth world. This is the Hopi now, not the Navajo, but they came out of the ground here.
Okay. All
And
right.
there's like a portal or something that I think in that reservation, when you're talking about missing time, I think that's a portal, like a wormhole that you can drive through. Like he went through it. And there's also a place I've heard talk. I don't know where, you know, that came from. I think one of these people was talking about there's like a cave or something where they believe these things come out of, and they pray over it. So like it's, like out of the ground kind of thing. When you're talking about the Four Corners and you're talking about like coming up out of that area, these artifacts, they come in and out of the mesa and stuff. So one of the orbs he saw actually flew into the mesa.
Right. Um, which would be what they would do once they were collecting material to take on a form, whether they make a tool with it, like a flying saucer, whatever. They would want to fly into denser material so they could take that material and reform it. That's what they're doing. They're reforming it. So
Hmm.
yes. And
And
we've even got video of these plasmoids flying into storms and then a UFO flying out. We have video of that. So
yeah, Skinwalker Ranch caught a one of these plasmoids flying into the mesa and coming out in another spot. So yeah, I've seen it caught on film as well.
so what's your thoughts about that, Brian? She mentions this portal, whatever, and these things come out of it. Um she mentioned that she thinks that's what's happening. People are getting caught up in these portals, and that's where their missing time comes from. So, Brian, do you think this is a how do you want to put that? Is this place a veil that's between heaven and earth? And when I say heaven and earth, people, I mean the two dimensions. So between this, is this a veil between the spiritual and the material? Yes or no?
Eh, It's a high probability now. Looking at some of the other descriptions of going back to Skinwalker Ranch, for instance, there was a spot that one of the owners of that property before the Bigelows got a hold of it, where he was able to sit outside of his house, and with a scope, he was able to night vision scope. He was able to watch this tear, this portal, this tear where the sun, you could see the sun and blue sky through this portal, but it would be nighttime where he was at. And he said you could only catch it from that angle where he was standing to watch it, because he said he'd go down the different roads within the ranch and try to see if he could see into it from any of those different angles. He couldn't. So there's a lot of symbology that goes hand in hand with these portals. Now, people have seen the infamous winding out spiral
Yeah.
where it starts small and then it gets bigger. That means portal. If you see serpent iconography in places in the four corners, that means portal. They have a lot of iconography out in that region that ties you back to portals. So, yes, there is definitely something happening. What? I don't know. I mean, you've even got talks, with the measurements they did out at Skinwalker Ranch, where in this one spot where they found where they know there's something going on, but they can't quite explain it. You're losing a quarter second of time on the measurement of the instruments that they flew through this one area. Okay, losing a quarter of a second of time. That's insane.
Yes, that's insane. So I'm going to cross the Rubicon here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask the question that needs to be asked. This is the question. If this is true, and what I'm saying is this, that what these Native American people need to realize is they need to leave this area. This area has been set up as a Mount Hermon, and these entities are the ones that created these ruins. And the Native Americans now just don't have the wherewithal to understand that, hey, we shouldn't be here. If we just move, this won't be happening. But that makes a great, big, worse question. So this is the bonus question. The bonus question is this: is this why the United States Cavalry set up the reservations on these marked off places, knowing full well what they were? This is a next level question. You've never heard this question asked. Don't try it. I know you haven't. This is the Spirit moving. The Spirit moved me to bring this out into the light right now. I'm going to put this question to Brian. Brian, there is no contestation. I've showed everybody the maps. You cannot deny this, that these ruins are marked off like Orion's belt. Is it possible that this is why the United States government made this place the forced place that the Native Americans had their reservations? Your thoughts?
Well, let's look at the activity of the cavalry and the United States government during that time, like handing blankets over and dolls to the children that were ridden with diseases that the Native Americans couldn't fight because they had no immune system against it. Slaughters of innocent children and women, and just, the regular men that weren't warriors, where they go into entire camps and wipe them out. Do I think that they did this on purpose? If they had any consciousness of the fact that something like this is happening out there, yes, they did it on purpose.
Well, Brian, I'm sorry to point out the elephant in the room, and I'm not trying to counter you, but are you serious? Okay, when was the Washington D.C. laid out? This is beyond contestation. You can take the engineering design of Washington D.C. and painfully see that it was set up according to Masonic iconography. So I take umbrage with that you're insinuating that the United States government didn't know anything about.
I didn't say that. I said the opposite. You didn't hear what I said.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to get across to our listeners is the simple fact. No, it can be proven in a court of law based off of the layout of Washington, D.C. Oh, yes, they did know.
That's exactly what I just said.
So
if they would have known what they were doing all along, because of the history of what they did to them previously, if they're going to find a way to wipe them out, you better believe they were going to push them into the most dangerous area of land they could.
That is stunning. And you brought up something that I hadn't thought of. This may very well be the first use of biological weapons of warfare done by the United States Cavalry, because we have this in traditions. We have this written in diaries, even from the time, that in giving these young children blankets and stuff, that's how they were getting these diseases. So that just strikes me, man. That strikes me right here, Brian. You brought that up. Let's get Tammy's take on this, because I know she's never heard this before, because you and I've never talked about this publicly. The simple fact that, I mean, you could probably argue in a court of law that this was a death trap. They knew it was a death trap, and that's why they set their reservation up there, because the United States Cavalry, under the direction of Lewis and Clark, already knew this was a death trap. This had been set up by these entities as the new Mount Hermon for the descent into Mystery Babylon. So, Tammy, can I get your take on it? What's your thoughts?
Well, go back even further to the Spanish conquistadors, because you got the Santa Fe Trail.
I'm not following.
It's bloody from then. The Santa Fe Trail with the Spanish conquistadors, where the church itself that came in and slaughtered these people, set up their churches and stuff here, and tried to contain them at that time with the missionaries.
Yeah, they had forced conversions
This is
and
before
everything
the
going on.
government of the United States. It happened before, with the first Europeans that came here. And also, the other things that are here, like Las Lunas. Remember when Ben and Jose went and saw the Deca rock? Remember that? And then there's modern stuff here that happens. We've got Epstein Ranch. We've got the Charlie Kirk Turning Point USA here. We have the Mormons here. And the Mormons have another bloody history aside from the Calvary,
Big
where
time.
they murdered settlers that would come through the Utah there.
Um, I am in a state of shock. Um, let me share my screen. Um, Look, the spirit needs to flow. Okay. And I'm telling everybody, I'm in a state of shock. This is the spirit coming from Tammy and Bry. So I looked at, I didn't understand, I couldn't calculate, what was being said. So I looked this up and, uh, just see for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I had no idea that the old Spanish trail that the conquistadors used to butcher and murder, uh, it, it's right here. Here you have the overlay of the Four Corners area starting there in Santa Fe. Oh my goodness. So you're saying that, um, I'm in a state of shock. What you're saying is that the Spanish conquistadors was under the influences of these entities first before, um, you know, they switched over to the United States Cavalry. Uh, uh, I don't even know. Brian, did you see that coming?
No, well, this is a section of history that enrages me personally. I get really upset about it because I just can't understand how anybody would do the things that they did to the Native Americans throughout history, ever since the white men set foot on these shores. So I get pretty heated when I talk about this stuff.
Well, I personally didn't ever put two and two together. I've never studied the conquistadors in the Americas. I always studied it down, the Aztecs and all of that. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, I mean, they made their way in through even Florida up the Mississippi River. There's a lot more history that ties into it. I'm not 100% all up to speed on it, but I know that they came in by Florida, then moved over to the Mississippi River and went straight up that way. And you have multiple tribes that were up in the Midwest there, with the Mississippian groupings of Native Americans, and a lot of them were actually pushed all the way down into the Four Corners region from out of the Midwest. So you had a lot of tribes that were all being intermingled together. I mean, you're talking so many tribes, it was ridiculous. And they kept taking more of their land, more of their land. They'd give them some land and say, no, we want it back. You guys go over here in this corner. They'd take more of their land and keep doing it.
So that begs the question. So they would take some land and then they would figure out, hey, we got paranormal activity here. We'll give it back to them. It makes you wonder if that's what was going on. So, Tammy, I'm sorry I broke in there, but you just took me by complete surprise. And when you bring up the map of the old Spanish Trail, I had no idea. I just had no idea that went right through the Four Corners area. So now it stands to reason that the conquistadors went through there. They, of course, shared that information with the missionaries. The missionaries took that across the borders into the American Christians. You understand? So it just stands to reason that that is the very reason why, unbeknownst to the American people, that's why the reservation is there. Your thoughts, Tammy? Is that possible? Is that probable?
It certainly is probable. I mean, what better way to contain it than to keep them there? It's like, you have a nation within a nation there. And another nation. So you've got the United States, and then you've got the Navajo Nation, and then you've got the Hopi Nation. So you've got like a double barrier wall out, to contain this thing, because the Hopis sit on top of it. In the middle of it are the three mesas. That's Orion's belt.
Well, think about this too. How much food is able to be grown in that area? How many cattle are able to be, brought through that region? It's all dry wasteland.
You know, this really got my attention. The Spirit moved just now when Tammy was describing that. And what she's describing is a scapegoat. The American government got a scapegoat. They got the Native American people, concentrated them around these paranormal areas so that the American people would not be harassed by these entities, literally creating a national scapegoat. I mean, I've never heard that before. How can I be hearing this for the first time on my own program? But that's what I just heard. I mean, is that possible, Brian, that these God haters, now, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, the people that set up the United States government are the enemies of God's. They're Masons. You can prove they were Masons off the layout of Washington, D.C. And if that being the case, did they literally create a national scapegoat with the Native American people? God have mercy. And all of this, oh my goodness. Brian, your thoughts on that? This is just beyond the pale. Is it possible that the poor Native American people are the United States scapegoats? Is that possible?
Well, you would have to unfortunately come to that conclusion. I mean, it's, like the one thing that keeps coming to my mind as we talk here is the schools that they've set up where they brought these Native American children in and forced them to leave all their culture behind and tried to make them become white people. And, it was forced with usually the Catholics were the big ones that were involved. There's actually been hearings about this that have come up in the last couple of years where they started I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think it was Trump on top of it was trying to cover this up because of course he covers up anything that doesn't paint the American white people in a good light. Look at all his you know, activities he's taken with slavery, for instance. He's wiped that out of the Smithsonian and various places. That never happened according to him. So of course the Native Americans have also been brought into the limelight with it all.
Man, that is crazy to contemplate. Tammy, what's your thoughts along these lines?
Wow, it makes me want to cry, honestly. And I think about today with missing children, missing women, and how there's a lot of Native American women and children that go missing and they're never found. They
Yeah.
don't investigate it. They don't care.
Yeah, that's one that nobody talks about. There's a it's a spin-off show from Yellowstone called Marshals. It's the only guy I liked in the show Yellowstone, but he's the main character in there, and they had to chase down a bunch of women that were taken from the reservation, like 12 or so, and just this one lot they were taking them and trafficking them. And so I'm glad that a show like that is bringing this to light, that this is actually happening, and people unfortunately think it's fiction when it's not.
Well, here's your diagram right here. The Washington D.C. street plan. It's right here in your face. This is literally common knowledge at this point. You have the Pentagon, Washington Monument, U.S. Capitol. It is beyond contestation. This is a pentagram. It's just beyond contestation. And if you overlay it too, you realize that the other symbology can, of course, we can get to Bubo, the owl. The End Time Tribune has done massive celestial symbology episodes on Bubo, the owl, down here. Of course, the Masonic symbol is also overlaid with these things. The pentagram and the cross is all here. These patterns are proof of intention. And if that being the case, ladies and gentlemen, you lay this over with what was found there in these Four Corners regions, it is enough to rattle your cage. It's literally enough to rattle my cage. And
Well, don't forget that the owl, um, in the Hebrew is a lilith. It's a demonic spirit in Sumerian, but at the same time, it's synonymous with UFO encounters. You hear that owl going at night. Look, I've heard one last year. Immediately went outside, started to look around. About 5 minutes later, I found two objects in the sky, which I caught on my phone on video camera. And then I was able to get the stills. It took me a long time to locate the stills, but I was able to get the stills and take photos of the two UFOs I captured because of that owl sitting out there.
yeah, we've done shows on that before on Bubo,
Yep.
the owl. And everybody knows, I mean, it's literally out in the public now that we've got video actually a long time ago of government officials worshiping at the statue of Bubo the owl. That's beyond contestation. So, boy, that ratchets this up to a different level. I'm in a state of shock. This is my program. And how could it be on my own program that the Spirit is moved in such a way between the three of us that is it possible that our government knew what this place was, and that's why they forced the Native Americans to be there? That's why they put the reservation there, and they knew this information from the missionaries that went with the conquistadors on the Spanish Trail, and just the blood went from the conquistadors' hands and just was transferred over to. Yeah, I know this is hard for everybody to accept, but is it possible that blood, that same blood, was found later on the Calvary's hands? That is just beyond the pale. It's just blowing my mind. So we're up here to
I
the 1
watched
hour mark. Brian, let's do closing comments. So that's my
well,
closing comments.
I was gonna bring up the fact I watch a lot of shows that are based during the Wild West time frame, and they do an excellent job of covering all of these topics that we're bringing up here. So it's something I have to come face to face with quite a lot because it just, it means a lot to me. So when I see these types of shows, that's why I think I'm drawn to them. Plus, you're in the section when the United States was lawless, completely lawless in the Wild West. I mean, it was utter insanity, the things that were happening back then. So it makes you think, and it makes you think on a really deep level because you were dealing with how they were treating the Native Americans, what was going on with slavery, some depending on when they are at what point they are in history. It's either before the Civil War or after the Civil War, and you see the repercussions of both on both ends of things that are happening within that. And you become to realize that, the way people act now as opposed to how they were acting then, there's a lot of differences. But at the same time, how much has changed? Because you still come into these pockets where you see people are just, there's a lot of racist stuff that's still going on, even if it's kind of hidden away a lot more than it used to be.
Yes. The only people that are immune to that is, of course, those of us who have been born again. We're the only ones immune from these emotions that quite simply, those of us that have been born again, we don't understand greed. I mean, and we don't understand prejudice either, or racism. I mean, a good example. When I was stationed in Korea, ladies and gentlemen, on the DMZ, um, I mean, I've got to come out and say it because this is the truth. There was a squad within our platoon that was all black, and whenever they did competitions, they would lose the competitions. So due to well, due to curious circumstances, I was put into that squad, and they didn't understand me because I didn't treat them any different, and I didn't act like I was mad. I shared the Bible with them. As a matter of fact, I realized later that they put me there because they were Christians, and literally all they listened to was Martin Luther King Jr. sermons. They had them on their cassette tapes, and they had these headphones, and they would pass them around to each other. I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" Every one of these cassette tapes say, Martin Luther King Jr. sermons. So they had all of his sermons. They were like on 4 or 5 different tapes, and they would pass them around, and each of them had headphones. The little what did they used to be called? I can't even remember. Um, but the little cassette players, and they were all Christians, and they didn't understand how, Matthew, you don't treat us any different. You sleep. You don't ever complain that you're here. You don't act like you're mad. Well, of course I'm not mad because, ladies and gentlemen, I'd already been born again. I don't understand that emotion of prejudice. I don't get it. So anyway, I've said all that to say this. Um, the other day, ladies and gentlemen, I had an experience, and as far as I'm concerned, from this point forward, I'm going to prepare the way for God's people. So you must be born again. Um, whether you're Native American Indian or whether you're a European American, it doesn't matter. You must be born of the Holy Spirit. Water baptism is not enough. You must be baptized in the Spirit. So that's my closing comments. Tammy, can we get your closing comments, please?
I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. I want you to know I love you all, and I want to pray, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.